Hello guys, Accidental Master Student here. I wanted to talk this week about the different N95 masks, but one of the masks that I wanted to show you is still in the mail. So today what I'm going to talk about is face shields, and I'm going to talk about the numbers and the letters that some of the masks have, like N95, P100 and stuff like that. So the first thing I want to talk about is face shields. So the CDC and the WHO at this time are not recommending that anyone in their everyday life uses goggles or face shields. They're recommending it more for healthcare workers, just for additional protection. So, and because we are going to be up close with patients, in your everyday life, if you're at the store, you're not going to be up close and personal with someone that you don't know. So that's why they're not recommending, and there's not clear data. And that's the thing, the CDC and the WHO go by data. So they're collecting data now. So hopefully at some point we'll have some idea if this is something that you need to use, especially now that there's new variants of the COVID virus. So for face shields, what they recommend though, the WHO and the CDC, the WHO recommends and the CDC follows those recommendations. So what the WHO is recommending now is that specifically for healthcare workers, and again, if they recommend it for healthcare workers and you are someone that at home want to use it for added protection, you're more than welcome to use them. But you have to make sure that if you have goggles, one, if you use glasses or not, there's some that go over glasses and are comfortable. The goggles that they're recommending are goggles that have a seal with your skin around your eyes, because that is what protects you. The COVID is not so much the protection coming from the front, but is when the COVID virus, if someone has COVID and they sneeze or cough, the particles do not go straight at you. Unfortunately, they kind of spread out in the air, and it's like a little flurry of viruses in the air, and they go everywhere, and they travel at different speeds and these different distances. So what would happen is if you have goggles like my glasses that they're not sealed on the top, side, or bottom, what could happen is that some of those particles could go from the top, from the side, from the bottom, and get in your eyes. Okay, so that's why what they're recommending is, they look like scuba diving goggles. They're tight around. They also look like when you took chemistry, they look like that. So you have to have a seal on the top, on the side, and around the bottom. Again, some people that use glasses might not be able to find some because of the different shape of the glasses that you use. If your glasses are too big, too wide, like mine, it's a little bit difficult to find goggles that go over my glasses. But you want to make sure that there's that seal. Sometimes you could find them, but they're a little bit more pricey. But that's what they're recommending for goggles, with the idea that when you put your goggles on, you still have to have your face covering of your nose and mouth. You have to protect everything coming at you. Okay? The membranes in the mouth and the nose are the same type of membranes that you have in the eyes. So, and when they go, anything that goes into those membranes, absorb to your system very rapidly. So that's why we have to cover them. They also have the face shields, and I have notes. If you see me looking down, I have notes because I want to make sure that I give you the latest recommendations from the WHO and the CDC. So for the face shields though, they're recommending that for healthcare workers if you don't have goggles available. Okay, for the face shields though, what they recommend is that you have face shields that are wide, so they come to the side. Some face shields, unfortunately, a lot of people in the fashion industry, not that there's anything wrong with that, but some people, I want to make him look cute or fashionable or pretty. I don't want him so big. I want something smaller. But that defeats the purpose of what you're using the face shield for. So you want to make sure that your face shield is not like this. I'm sure it looks super cute and compact, but you want to make sure that it goes up to the sides and that it's lower than your chin, so it covers everything. Again, also what we like to see for healthcare workers is that your forehead is covered either by, and I have two face shields. I have multiple. I vaccinate, I volunteer vaccinating, so I have two disposable face shields. They don't look exactly like this, but if you see this one, and I'm gonna open it because what we recommend, and we do this, we give this at the hospital. This is what staff has you see at the top how it has this foam, because that is gonna create a seal. And you see how it goes like on the side and how it goes long on the bottom. That's what we want. We want to make sure that we have that seal on the top, that we're covering your cheeks and your mouth, and we're covering the mask also. If you're using a surgical mask, that is good coverage, but when you're using your N95, another way that we have to protect and extend the use of the N95s in the hospital is to keep them as clean as possible. So that's why you have, I also have, and I just received this one, which I really like also. This one, it's gonna look a little bit weird, but this one also, I put it over my head, and it has this here that goes and it seals my forehead, okay? Like this, and I put it, and you crank it. So you see how it goes to the sides, so it goes all the way to behind my ears, and it goes down here. It covers everything. And then the good thing about this one is that if you're gonna drink or eat or something, or talk to someone, or you're taking a break, you could go like this, right? There's a seal here, plus also I have this top, the gray top, that also covers all the way to the half of my head. Of course, I always wear my hair up when I have these, but this is another type. It's super comfortable with glasses. See, it's super comfortable. And if I have a mask, even a bigger mask, it will accommodate for that. Okay, so those are the two type of masks that you will see. At work, we're not recommending the full face shield that comes, the face shield attached to the respirators, because it's very inconvenient when you're working and having to go from patient to patient, okay? But in real life, when you're going to the store, if you feel super comfortable with a full face shield with the respirator, you could go. It's not recommended, but you know how Fauci has been saying, Dr. Fauci has been saying that, you know, you could do 2 masks just to kind of give you double protection, especially with the new viruses. You know, you want to make sure that you do that. Let's see what else. For face shields, that's it. I have my notes here. I did my research. I want to make sure that I don't miss anything for you guys. So that's with face shields, okay? Now for masks. And now I'm not talking about surgical or fabric masks. I'm talking about like the N95 masks, the more heavy duty masks that you will see out there, okay? And I will have a video actually showing visuals of these. But as of the 2nd of February of this year, it is mandatory that if you're going to be on a plane, on a train, or a bus, or any mode of public transportation, you have to wear a mask. That's part of one of those executive orders that President Biden signed. Also, that also includes like federal buildings and other places like that. So make sure that you keep abreast of the situation and follow the information. A lot of times when we're talking about face shields and safety, we're going to have different agencies, and we hear OSHA, NIOSH, CDC, WHO. But what does that stand for? So WHO is the World Health Organization, and they are the ones that will typically come with the recommendations for everybody around the world. World Health Organization will follow. Then the CDC is the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And I don't know, I know it's not like CDCP because it's called centers. It's not the center, it's centers. So there's different, the CDC's up here, and there's an umbrella of different agencies that work within the CDC. Okay, so that's what you hear with that. And if you are a Walking Dead fan, the CDC in Atlanta, Georgia. So that's what it stands for. So then you have OSHA. OSHA is Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which is under the CDC. They give you, it's occupational, so it's not just healthcare, or it's not just construction, is just different industries. So they're one of the agencies that gives recommendations for protective equipment. And then you have NIOSH. NIOSH is the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. NIOSH is the one that gives that stamp of approval if a type of mask is good or not for what it says it will do. Okay, so you have those. The respirators have two components, the names of them. So you have a letter and then you're going to have a number. The letters could either be N, R, or P. And then you're going to have numbers and they could either be 95, 99, or 100. So what does that stand for? So the N here, like we see the N95s all the time. So the N is for material that is not resistant to oil. When you are working in a healthcare facility, you're going to be doing things that oil is not the particles in the air. It's more like bodily fluids, when you sneeze, when you cough, things like that. And N is non-resistant to oil. The R is somewhat resistant to oil, and then the P is the one that is strongly resistant to oil. You're going to see the P masks more when you go into construction or occupations that deal with hazardous substances that could be in the air. Yeah, because oil could be in the air, the particles of oil, like painting, sculpting. When you're using different materials like that, you will see all those particles. So when they do the testing for these different types of masks, they use like a salt water, because our body is basically made of salt water. So they use salt water to see how many particles go through it. And then they use something that it's called, let me see what it is. I have it around here. Paraffin oil is the thin oil, but those particles, they put them in the air to see how many particles go through or do not go through. Okay. And then the numbers signify that the 95 is that 95% of the particles are filtered, at least 95%. The 99 is that at least 99% of the particles are filtered, and the 100 is that at least 99.97% of the particles are filtered. Nothing is 100%, even though that number is 100, it's 99.97% of the particles, okay? So you could have different combinations. You could have N95s, R95s, P95s. You could have R95s, R99s, R100, and stuff like that. So you could have different combinations of letters and numbers, and basically is it resistant to oil or not, and is it 95, 99, and 100%. Okay, and then you have something lately we've been seeing, because we're running out of masks. A lot of people have seen on Amazon Prime, you see them all the time, that they have the masks that are KN95s and the KF94s. So the KN95s are the Chinese N95 masks. What happens with those is that they're built with the same materials as the N95s. The difference between the KN95s and the N95s for the United States is that the KN95, the loops are around the ears, while the ones for the N95s, the loops go around your head, over your head. So one loop goes around your neck and the other one goes to the crown, like the top of your head, to give you that seal. So that's one difference between them. There's been a lot of tests done by our government that show that the reliability of the Chinese KN95s is not standard. So if I take a lot or a box of KN95s and I test them, the results are going to be this. If I take a separate box, the results are going to be different. So it's not like a standard quality that we could rely on, that it's always going to work the same. And it's been like, the difference has been like up to like 70% of variance between the results. So that's why at this point, the recommendation to use the KN95s is non-existent. You could still use them because, will they protect you better than a fabric mask? They could, but it's not to be used in a situation where you actually need to use an N95. You cannot, substitute one for the other. But could you buy them and use them for everyday use? Absolutely, you can do that, okay? Then the KF94 is the Korean standard. They come from South Korea, A lot of people say that KF means Korean filter. I don't know, it could be. But the KF94, it's made with the same materials as the N95 in the United States. They There's some difference though. The first difference is the number. The United States N95s is at least 95% of the particles, while in the Korean version is at least 94% of the particles. So it's like a 1% difference, which, for a lot of people, it's okay to have that difference. The other thing though is that for the N95s, we do not have to test for like CO2 retention. So we test them to see how many particles are coming in, but we don't necessarily test for how much CO2 is being retained within the mask. While with the Korean one, the KF94, they have, by their standards, they have to pass a test, so there's not a lot of retention of CO2, which is kind of interesting. It's good because if you've worn an N95, you're breathing that air that at some point you're just breathing CO2. So that's not good. They also test against paraffin oil, which the N95s don't. Again, because here in the United States, we have 3 different levels. We have the N95s that is not oil resistant, the R's that are somewhat oil, and then the P's that are oil resistant. With the KF94, it's both. You don't have different levels. It's either, air, like body fluid, particles, and oil, or nothing. So, it's more like a P94, it will be, right? If you want to compare to the American ones. And so again, they're nearly identical as the N95s. And people are saying if you're going to use something, use the KF94 over the KN95 from China, because the Korean version is more reliable, and each time they test them, they get the same close results with a margin of error that is acceptable for the United States use. So not saying I'm not taking, I'm not taking one side over the other. This is just what the science is showing. Even though I love Korean everything, but that's something that it's recommended. Also, I wanted to talk about the extended use of the N95s. Right now, this is what the CDC is recommending, and I want to read it, especially if you're a healthcare worker. It says, for extended use or reuse, that as long as they maintain their fit and function, you can still reuse them. Normally, before COVID, what we would do is the 3M masks were just a one-time use. So you will do what you needed to do, and then you will throw it away, and then get a new one each time you went into the room, right? Now we cannot do that. We don't have that luxury, right? So we have to sometimes reuse it and extend their use. So that's what they're saying. As long as it's fitting and you know how to do the fit, you just kind of put them on and you blow air out. And if you don't feel anything coming out, it's still fitting good, right? And then their function. So, but they're telling you that you will discard it if they become hard to breathe through it. Does that mean the filter is being used a lot and there's a lot of particles or there's a lot of debris in the filter itself? If it's soiled with blood, body secretions or body fluids, you have to. It's a dirty mask. You don't want to use it. And this is for the patient. So if the patient bleeds on your mask or sneezes on your mask, or you're doing something and bodily fluid comes and gets in your mask, you have to discard it. You're not going to use the dirty mask. That's not good or acceptable. But in a way that we do to prevent that is when we use the face shield. So that's why healthcare workers use it, to try and do that. Also, if, for example, if you happen to sneeze on the filter yourself, get a new mask, because again, the filter, you don't want it to be clogged with your boogers, if you know what I mean, right? So use common sense and critical thinking when it comes to the masks. That's what we ask. And when I'm teaching and educating at the hospital, I always tell them, well, let's use our critical thinking, because if you have allergies and you're sneezing throughout your shift, the filter is not going to be too good to clean, so you do need to get one, and there's, in the hospital we're keeping track of everything, but we also know that things happen, life happens, right? And then they say to discard after you do an aerosol procedure, which is with everything, if you're intubating or you're doing anything that creates those particles flying in the air, it's a dirty mask. Automatically, you have to do it. Again, follow the recommendations from your hospital when it comes to things like this. And I wanted to know, they don't give you like the CDC doesn't give you could use your N95 for 3 weeks. They don't tell you could use it for this many hours. The recommendation is that if you're going to be using your N95 continuously, it's no more than 8 hours. But if you're intermittently, you could use it a little bit longer. But again, there comes those situations where if your mask becomes soiled, or if you put it on and air is escaping from the sides, you cannot use it. It's unusable. Then you have to use your critical thinking when it comes to that. They don't give you that because each person and each situation is different. There's no way that they could give you a recommendation for every single situation that could happen out there, especially when you're a nurse. From minute to minute is very different. On the other hand, if you have, for example, a P100, which is, I bought a respirator to use when I go to the COVID units, and it has P100, and it came with P100 filters. They say that you could use it continuously in a heavily soiled atmosphere for 40 hours, or if you're not, up to 6 months, but 6 months. So that one, if I use it at the hospital, because I'm not going to be in a oil atmosphere, I could use it for 6 months and it's going to be good, right? They say that the P95 though, that one you should use again for 40 hours or 30 days. So the P95 is 30 days and the P100 is for 6 months. When it comes to using it for COVID situations, because there's no oil particles in the air. So that's what they're saying about that. I hope this is useful. I know it's a lot of information, but again, if you're a healthcare worker, follow the recommendations of your hospital and follow the guidelines of your hospital. If you go and do something outside of what they're recommending, your protection against something bad happening, it's like anything, they will not be able to provide 100% of protection because you're going outside of the recommendations that they have in place. If you follow the recommendations to the T and something happens, then the protection is there for you. So we have to be smart and critically think when things like this happen. Again, tons of information, but this is something that hopefully you find useful. Even if you are just wanting to buy a mask and look cool when you go to the supermarket, you could also do so, but make sure that you use the correct type of mask. If you have any questions, always comment down below. Again, I forget always to say subscribe if you think this is interesting. I'm just doing this to provide some information, public health information, and just kind of go out there and get the information in an easier way to understand, because it's always coming from different areas, and I just want you guys to be protected and be safe. So if you have any questions, let me know. See you later.